So what we're going to do here is each of these organizations, they all are very active in plastic circularity, as you saw from the presentations earlier today. So what we're going to do, we're going to give them about 3 minutes to talk about what their organization does and what type of support they can offer to you, the government participants here, after this workshop, right? You know, we've been doing a lot of talking, but there's still work to be done. So I'm going to like to welcome Regula first to provide her remarks and pitch. So let's pull up a Regula slide. And you can sit, you can stand, you can absolutely sit, no problem at all. Right? It's almost 5, but let's sit down a bit. Yeah. So we'll just wait for your slide to come up. Okay. Okay. Oh, and how can I forget? Jan from UNEP FI is also going to be joining us on this panel. So he'll be joining us right here. Here we go. There's Jan. Great. So let's pull up Circulate Capital slide, please. Okay. All right, Regula, over to you.
Wonderful. Well, exactly. We're closing the day soon, so thanks again for the attention. I may repeat myself, but what I just wanted to reiterate that Circular Capital is an investment manager based out of Singapore, and we're really the leading circular economy investor in South and Southeast Asia, as well as in Latin America, where we have a footprint as well. We focus on the plastic circularity by investing in businesses, in private businesses along the supply chain, from collection to sorting to manufacturing, but also in the area of innovation, which makes sure that we retrieve the material which is out there, we recycle it, and we bring it back into the circular economy. And we also invest in innovation, which helps us to find alternatives to plastics where it makes sense. We started in about 5 years ago because we realized there is a need for capital in South and Southeast Asia, where the biggest footprint of leakage is happening right now. We invest in private businesses. We can make investments from $1 million to $10, $15 million. We can make investments in equity, convertible debt, loans, to enable these businesses to grow their businesses and to get to the next level, to really catapult their growth. We initially were funded by corporations, by the big brands, who all needed access to feedstock because they committed to certain percentage of their packaging being recyclable and recycled. By creating the first fund and making investments, and today we have made more than 16 investments and raised $257 million in the last 5 years, we attracted more and more capital. And as we were able to showcase that this is an investable space, we can make returns while having significant impact, and that there is enough pipeline out there, businesses who need capital, we were able to attract more money from institutional investors, DFIs, and family offices. And this is just the beginning of our journey to showcase that the plastic circularity is an industry which is interesting to invest in, to have a very positive bottom line or financial return, while really having a tremendous environmental and social return. So that is what we do in a nutshell. And we raised, as I mentioned, $257 million in 4 years or 5 years. And we have attracted more than 200 million additional co-investment. And that goes back to the comment we made about bonds. It's not enough for us just to invest. We need partners, others, DFIs, multilateral organizations, financial institutions, to partner up with us to bring more and more capital into the industry to ensure that there's no more plastic leaking into the ocean.
Thank you, Regula. So unfortunately, Regula does have to take off. She's got a flight that's going to take off pretty soon. But if you have any other questions, please feel free to pass them over to me, and we'll forward them over to her, and I'm sure she'd be happy to provide some thoughts. So, Regula, thank you for being here today. Please, catch your flight. Okay, so next we have Olaf from KFW. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. As it is so late already, allow me to stand up to be a bit more energetic. It has been a long day already for you, I assume, as well. As I've not been here for the beginning of the day, kindly, before we go to that slide, could you make that slide larger? Would you be so kind? Before we go to that slide, kindly allow me to introduce my institution a bit. I work for the German Development Bank, which is German, is owned by the German national and federal state, and basically does what the German government wants it to do. It has different branches. It has branches that work in Germany. It has branches which work on commercial and export financing, and it has the branch I'm working for. It's so-called development financing, so financial cooperation. And I would like to, against this background, which is very important, I would like to give you a few insights in what and where we are doing what and what we can offer. As I mentioned at the beginning, we work where our government wants us to work. And for example, if we work in your country, only if your government and our government agree that we work there. This is, at the moment, if you see the list of, I understand the participants today, I might have misunderstood, then I apologize. We don't work, regrettably, in Korea, Philippines, and Thailand, because our governments did not agree that we work there. We do work in the other 5 ones, from Cambodia down to Vietnam, because our governments agreed, but only in 3 of them, China, Indonesia, and Vietnam, in the relevant sector. Because in the other countries, our governments did not agree that we work in this sector. So, whom do we work with? Normally with national governments, ministries, public institutions. There's the more commercial side, I said, that's also available, but we are on that public side, so we work on the public side. In that public side, when do we work in the relevant sectors for this topic today? There is no agreement between any of your governments and our government saying we work in plastic circularity. It doesn't exist. What exists is that they say, oh, you work in protection of environment, adaptation, or climate mitigation, or protection of biodiversity, or urban development. So in this context, we are partially active in your beautiful countries in those relevant sectors. What do we finance there? It's, I would call it, the end of the value chain measures, investments, landfills, sorting, collecting, recycling, composting, waste to energy, all these things, but it's more at the end. The circularity is at its end, maybe one more time to waste, and then the circle is over, or to energy. We also do, it was mentioned before, and I'm not quite sure which table it was, we call it enabling environment. While the infrastructure investment are mostly financed by loans, we have grants as well. Human resources, capacity development, etc., etc. Yeah? Maybe data management, master plans development. These are often financed by grants. What we also support is the very national level. Now we jump from the very end to the very beginning of that, let's say the frameworks which determine the value chain. In Indonesia, and there is someone representing the ministry, Kemenko Marvis here, has mentioned it before, that, for example, in Indonesia, together with ADB and the French, we provide a loan of together €1 billion for supporting reforms and policy reforms in relevant sectors. That's at the very beginning of that value chain. And last but not least, maybe to highlight what we are interested in, we like to work with national banks, so we can finance many small projects. which are too small for International Development Bank to finance on its own. And we are very much interested also in regional, national, climate-focused or so-called green funds. We haven't found an entry in this region yet to this purpose, but we are very interested. So please feel free to contact me during the break, and allow me to overextend my time by one more thing. You see that green, it's called grüne Punkt, green spot. 35 years ago, Germany introduced a mechanism to charge producers and users of plastic packaging for it. If you ever come to Germany, I have two advices for you. First of all, please come in summer, otherwise you'll be freezing. And second, go in a supermarket and check the packaging of food or whatever you buy there and see if you find that symbol, because that's a well-established system in Germany. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Olaf. Okay. So next we have Komal Singh from Vera, who will talk for us, or you go. Yeah, so we have your slide set up. Great. You can stand or sit, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. We are almost approaching the end of the day, so I'll keep it short. I'll talk about Vera's plastic program and plastic credits and how this mechanism can accelerate investments to address local plastic waste management challenges. And plastic credits have come up or popped up in conversations many times today, so I'll just try to put some of those things in perspective as how this program could be helpful for governments and how it can drive private sector investments towards these programs. So a lot of very rich insights related to Southeast Asian plastic waste management challenges were discussed. India, where I come from, is also not very different. These countries are united by a very common set of challenges. So what do we need as developing countries? Even though it's not very clear, I'll still try to kind of summarize. Availability of adequate and predictable finance to address legacy plastic pollution and control ongoing plastic leakage into the environment. We need standardized frameworks for measuring the impact of these projects and programs that can also support national governments towards their reporting targets and obligations, and of course considerations for the informal sector to support with a just and inclusive transition. And I think it's also how can we achieve these objectives, and at the outset it's important to recognize that governments and policymakers themselves need at their disposal the full suite of funding mechanisms and solutions that they can deploy in their local context. And this is where plastic credits also come in as one of the innovative finance mechanisms that can unlock finance at large scale from the private sector to support plastic waste collection and recycling activities and scale up these impactful operations. Plastic credits can operate either directly or they can integrate with a range of other implementation approaches to scale up high quality projects. And in these three boxes, which are again not very clear, but I'll just try to explain how the program can be relevant specifically for national context. First of all, it can support an effective implementation of national policies such as EPR schemes. So it can connect obligated entities such as producers and brand owners to a ready pool of projects that is certified with Vera's plastic program, and this can help companies meet their compliance in an effective and timely manner because projects are already there, so you don't have to conduct due diligence or you don't have to identify projects from the very scratch. Then EPR schemes can leverage plastic programs, very specific protocols around monitoring, verification, reporting, and also third-party audits that can reduce government's administrative burden associated with monitoring and reporting on these activities. For reference, we already have several projects in Indonesia, 2 of which are already certified with Vera's plastic program, that will be able to scale up their plastic waste collection and recycling impacts if they were to receive funding if they were to receive private sector funding via EPR. The second, which Regula also discussed, is that plastic credits can make plastic waste management projects attractive for investments. By integrating with innovative instruments such as outcome-based bonds, plastic credits can create an attractive investment avenue for the private sector. We heard a little bit about the World Bank-based bond as well, that is able to generate financial returns for its investors by leveraging plastic credits to be generated in 2 projects that are using Vera's plastic program, and these are based in Indonesia and Ghana respectively. So here as well, plastic programs requirements around additionality, environmental and social safeguards for the informal sector, and third-party audits have provided confidence to a broad range of investors to be able to invest in this program. And what it does is that it creates sort of a virtuous loop. So this funding goes into innovative mechanisms. It creates the need to replicate and innovate around these mechanisms, which again draws more finance from the private sector. So that sort of creates a very interesting virtuous cycle, which is very much needed to bridge the funding gap. And finally, cannot impress enough on the need for collaboration to achieve large-scale impact. And by collaborating with a range of ongoing context-appropriate regional initiatives, our program can drive impact at scale and support the shared vision of no plastic waste in nature. So I'm going to stop there, but happy to take any questions later on.
Okay, thank you, Komal. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have Umesh Madhavan from the Circulate Initiative. So let's pull up Umesh's slide from the Circulate Initiative.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, and I really appreciate that you're still around. It's the end of the day, and it's been a long day for all of us, and I decided the moment it was offered whether we should sit or stand. I said, I'm going to stand because I've been sitting and listening all day. Maybe it's my opportunity to just stand and talk. So I work in a nonprofit organization, the Circulate Initiative. We are a mission-aligned partner of Circulate Capital. You heard from Regula through the day. Our work is focused around tackling the plastics pollution challenge. We undertake programs on the ground. We have a responsible sourcing initiative. But for today, I'll just share 2 pieces of work that we are primarily focusing around financing. So just to get you a sense of the lay of the slide here, there's 2 resources I'll talk about. One is the Plastic Circularity Investment Tracker. I put a QR code in case you want to try it. And then I'll also briefly talk about the Financing Coordination Group, which is an initiative which will help as you try to better understand the discussions around the Global Plastics Pollution Treaty. So the Plastic Circularity Investment Tracker, we sort of launched that tool about a year and a half ago, but with a couple of years of research, just to explain and understand to all the users, not just to governments, but to investors, how much money is going into this space. What is the total volume of private capital which is coming through? Because always the question was, we need more money, but nobody knows what the financing gap is. How much do we need? Once you know how much is needed, the next obvious question is it going into the places where the money is needed the most? That was another gap. Who's putting in this money? Where is it ending up? So it was to answer those questions that we actually launched what we call the Plastic Circularity Investment Tracker. So we built this data up for private investments, deal by deal. So every time, say, a Circulate Capital invests in a company, such as in Indonesia, say a 3D Oasis, we capture that. When another company like Closed Loop Partners invests in a recycling facility, say in the US or Latin America, we capture that. So what we've done is we've looked and we've tracked over 3,700 transactions to provide a cumulative estimate of how much money has gone in, private investment has gone in. We track it by solution. So if you want to know how much money has gone into recycling, you can look at the tracker. How much money has gone into waste management, recovery services, you have the answer. How much money has gone into refill and reuse? I think okay, thank you. So I was going to say, just to understand what is the money, what is the source of how much money has gone in, what is the source of that money? Is it accelerator, incubator, early stage? I think someone talked about support for early stage. Thailand talked about early stage. Vasana, you talked about support for early stage organizations. Has there been money which has gone in? How is it different from money which has gone in through, say, an IPO or a merger and acquisition transaction or a bond? All of that data is available in the database. It is all free to use, right? So just to give you some very quick insights, we've tracked about $160 billion which have gone in. Sounds like a huge amount. It is not. It is between 2018 and the first 6 months of 2023. We have data for 91 countries, 25 countries in Asia. So Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Cambodia, Philippines, all of those countries we have data. And This is an interesting statistic I want you to take back. 85% of that private investments went downstream towards recycling, end of life solutions. So when we really talk about closing the tap, making sure that there is material alternatives to plastics, money goes into refill and reuse, that is not happening. So we need to start thinking about using these insights to start thinking, okay, are the places, are the sort of solutions which need money receiving that? We need money in recycling and recovery. Obviously, we need there as well, but we need more capital, and we need capital to be redirected as well. So that's the Plastic Circularity Investment Tracker. I did also want to share another resource that we have, which is a collaboration, an informal collaboration that we have together with UNEP-FI. I know Jan is coming up next, OECD, World Bank, and the World Economic Forum. So we came together because this was a gap, i.e. the understanding of what financing means, especially in the context of the Global Plastics Pollution Treaty. I can tell you 12 months ago, I had no idea how the Global Environment Facility operated, what was the benefits of the multilateral fund. So we said, let's come together, and everybody who's involved in these discussions can have sort of a knowledge platform to listen, learn, and understand. So we did a first webinar pre-INC 4 on the basic financing considerations for the treaty. We'll have another webinar coming up in July, which will talk about the financing mechanisms, existing, hybrid, new mechanism. We'll talk about what the Plastics Pollution Treaty will pay for or may pay for, what will not pay for. We'll talk about the needs. So the whole idea with these webinar series, we have 4 webinar series. The whole idea with these webinar series is to provide a platform for all of us to listen, learn, and understand from the experts who've been doing this work in this space. So again, there is a website for this, and I'm happy to share that separately, where you can look up. You'll find all resources relating to everything that's, no, I wouldn't say everything that's been written about financing, but most resources relating to financing is also available on this website. So please look it up. Like I said, we are a non-profit. We are single-mindedly focused on tackling the plastics pollution challenge. So if you have a question on financing or otherwise, please feel free to check out our resources or reach out to me. Happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Umesh. Okay. Let's move on to Rocky Pyrunan from NPAP.
Yeah, because I think we are not preparing or sharing the slides. And then I have stood up for presentation earlier. So I'm just gonna use the opportunity to sit down here and then sharing a bit what is NPAP. As I mentioned earlier on my presentations session, that NPAP is National Plastic Action Partnership. It's multi-stakeholder platform established under the Global Initiative on Global Plastic Action Partnership, managed by the World Economic Forum. NPAP Indonesia established in 2020 upon a voluntary expression from Minister Luhut during WEF in 2019 that we realized, or the government of Indonesia realized, that in order to reduce 70% marine plastic leakage, it is important for stakeholders in Indonesia to collaborate. So it's a multi-stakeholder platform. It's not easy to explain what is the role of a multi-stakeholder platform. So somehow in informal setting, I just explain it's like a Tinder for like a Tinder for stakeholders. So it's basically it's a matchmaking. Matchmaking, not necessary is about business, but also sometimes like project. You would like to work with innovators. We have stakeholders that part of members of NPAP who are innovators. So it's easy for the project to reach out them rather than one by one through the NPAP. And as well as if there is a project to you would like to understand the the policy context of waste management or plastic waste management in Indonesia. So rather than go one by one to ministries, that we can convene or collaborate to convene a session where representative from ministries, representative from industries to sit to share the same room and then share what the political policy context in the context of addressing plastic pollution. I think that's the simple way to understand what we are doing. It's leveraging the efforts that already in place. But in the programmatic way, we are NPAP itself mandated to have 5 task force, and then in each task force we have how do you call it members or organization who are leaning towards to prioritize in the discussion in which task force they would like to attach on. We have task force on policy. Basically, it's a task force that is how do you call it has this chaired by the ministry, and also task force on finance. ADB is also the vice chair of the task force, and then innovation, behavior change, and metrics. So, but then in reality, in the implementation, this task force will how do you call it in the discussion will have to immerse or let's say cut across one to another in specific topics. For instance, EPR. EPR in Indonesia still in the development process. There is a context, there is a policy context, there is a financial context, there is a behavior change context that needs to be part of the discussion. So therefore, in 2024 onwards, we NPAP will sort of like we strategize the approach by setting up working groups. The working groups will focus in the more thematic activities or thematic issue. The first one is EPR because that's the most, I think one of the most issue that is currently being undertaken. Indonesia has this roadmap for waste reduction by producers, but it seems the call coming from the producer is to have more mandatory regulatory based EPR that is applied for all. Therefore, how do you call it? Create equal playing field for every industries to implement EPR. I think we learned a lot from Grunepunk, Germany. So how to come up with this strong governance on EPR, and also reuse refill as part of the solution to avoid or to avoid plastic pollution from the upstream, and also the ILB itself, the Global Plastic Treaty. Our concern, not really concern, our perspective is that the Global Plastic Treaty, whatever the result would like, will impact the industry, will impact the stakeholders in Indonesia. Somehow Indonesia will ratify and then will change the legislation to align with the treaty, and then it will also require transition by the stakeholders in Indonesia. We don't want to repeat what my experience. I don't want to repeat what happened in the climate. Nowadays, industry started to do the ESG and then do the decarbonization, while the issue has been discussed long time ago. It's just too late. So basically, now what we are doing at the very minimum level to bring the understanding to the mostly national companies to be aware that there are many potential implications or challenge in the future once ELB or the plastic convention they call it enacted and then ratified, and then the annexes being discussed and then they call it adopted. There will be many instruments applied by they call it parties, by regional communities. There will be instruments that restrict particular design of packaging. Therefore, it probably difficult. Probably become a non-tariff barrier and so on. So basically something that we think will arise later on. So basically that's what we are doing, and we welcome all of you if you are interested to be part of these dialogues. You don't have to be a member. We are inclusive. We will extend the invitation. I think that's all from my side, and thank you very much for the opportunities.
Thank you, Rocky. Okay. So last, we have Jan Reis from United Nations Environment Program Finance Initiative. So let's pull him up on the screen as he is joining online.
I actually shared some slides and I see that they are projected. So thank you for having me. My name is Jan Raas. I work for the UNEP-FI, which is the United Nations Environment Program's Finance Initiative, headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. I'm speaking to you from Geneva, Switzerland. And I'll quickly take you through, as I'm the last speaker in the lineup. So what do? We have a global work stream or a global program on finance and plastic pollution. And take that literally, because we are addressing the financial sector worldwide, globally, on all continents. And we have a membership of 500 plus financial institutions that we work with. Now, what do they want to learn from joining UNEP-FI? Actually, UNEP-FI's goal is to catalyze action across the financial system, mostly by working with banks and insurance, and via partnerships also with investors. But to align the economy, or to align the outcome of economic activity better with UN Sustainable Development Goals and with multilateral agreements. And some famous ones are the Paris Climate Agreement that we work on with the financial sector, and the Global Biodiversity Framework. And then obviously other multilateral environmental agreements. And that one of them is the upcoming Global Plastics Treaty. So how do we layer that work? We start with soft norm setting, social learning. You could call this, what we're doing today, social learning. We learn from each other, what's available in the stakeholder network to learn from. And then we go into technical capabilities, capacity building. What do investors, banks, insurance need to know to align their financial portfolio to the outcomes of, for example, the new governance being instituted by a global plastics treaty? What's the institutional change that these institutions go through, with a focus on UNEP-FI members in our case? And then obviously how that feeds into system change, because these financial institutions that are members of UNEP-FI also talk to financial regulators. So there's a feedback loop there that feeds into systemic change from the institutional change. Not sure if you can actually still see my slides, so I'm just giving you the narrative, the voiceover to them. Now, very practically, the work that I'm doing at the global level with the financial sector is structured with the structure of the ongoing negotiations. So we had a INC1 in Latin America, then it came to Europe in Paris, INC2, INC3 in Africa.
Hello, Jan. Sorry.
INC4 in Canada, Ottawa. And we are heading towards INC5 in Korea, in Busan. Then there will be a diplomatic conference where there'll be ratification of the outcomes of the negotiation, and Rwanda, Kigali, and Peru, Lima will play a role in that. So I already said we work very intimately with the financial sector. So we have a finance leadership group on plastics that is composed of some of the leading financial institutions that have voluntarily decided to work on plastics. They do two things. They build awareness on plastics in actually, I think you still see my slides. They build awareness on plastics in their proper institution. That's part of institutional change. But they also contribute insights from the private financial sector that negotiators and countries can use to better align and catalyze financial flows, which means that we will need the private sector because 90% of finance in the plastics value chain is private, and only 10% is actually the money originating from public sources. So take that very seriously. That is underlines the importance of our work, and bringing the voice of the private sector to the negotiation is important in light of that statistic. 90% of the money in the plastics value chain is from private sources. And that's not going to change. So we think it's worthwhile working with the private sector, and we have set up with our members in the working group 10 principles, you could call them. We call them key messages. What actually needs to be included in the treaty at a rather high level, but that could go into legal text included in the treaty to actually make that enabling environment for more private finance to be able to step up to the plate. And obviously, and that's the end of my story, we're still working on that ahead of INC 5, but we've made some contributions to the other negotiation rounds. The one in Nairobi, we published Redirecting Financial Flows to End Plastic Pollution. I will share the slide. There is the QR code. You can download it. And there we talked again about how we can actually enable systemic change, including the private financial sector. We also launched a finance statement ahead of INC4 in Ottawa. That was a call together with partner organizations, together with PRI, together with the Finance for Biodiversity Foundation, also the Business Coalition that brings the voice of the corporate sector to the treaty negotiation, Dutch Association of Investors for Sustainable Development, and CDP, who is very strong on plastic disclosures and on corporates being able to tell what their role is in plastic production and plastics value chain, but also in plastic pollution. Again, I will share these slides so you will be able to access more details on that. The promising sign that was given, but it's a voluntary commitment, so there's no legally binding aspects to this finance statement, is that 160 financial institutions from around the globe, from 29 countries, representing 15.5 trillion combined assets, have said, we think this issue is important and we want to show by signing and by putting our name on this statement that the negotiators need to take the role of the financial sector seriously and that we are ready for change. Hence, the importance of what we will be doing for the intersessional work coming up in Bangkok for member states involved in the plastic negotiation. And that will lead up to the work that we will publish ahead of INC 5. So again, still very much true to what we said ahead of INC 2 in Paris and ahead of INC 3 in Nairobi, ahead of INC 4 in Ottawa. We will be saying the same things, but with more sophistication and with more meat to the bone. So we will be talking about how that plastics value chain for production, conversion, collection and sorting, and for waste management and recycling, what is needed, and try to create some differentiation between what is needed in countries that already have a very elaborate infrastructure and countries that lack infrastructure. So we're working on making a more nuanced picture of the financial needs of the one and the other situation according to the income level. So we're thinking about a split across high income, middle income, and low income. But then, true to what member states have decided to work on in the topic of finance in the intersessional work of the negotiation, we will be fleshing out the definitions. What does it mean to align financial flows? What does it mean to align the fiscal regime of a country to the outcomes or the implementation of a global plastics treaty? I said fiscal, but that's only one of the policy options. So we will be outlining options without being prescriptive. So I think that is the service we can deliver with our membership also to the negotiators present in the negotiation. Also shedding some light on catalyzing complementary finance from the private financial sector, complementing the public finance. Actually, I'm wrapping up. These are my contact details. If you have any questions, that's my mail address. You can also always reach out to me. And very happy to look at further collaborations on the back of this excellent conference on the right topic.